Welcome back for Keeper of the Lost Cities Nightfall chapters 82 and 83. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a chapter, and this is chapter 82. I do apologize because I'm sick, but we gotta get through these final chapters. Here we go. I don't see her, Sophie mumbled, knowing she'd said the words twice already, but needing something to fill the agonizing silence. Tam had shielded them with shadows their entire trek to the promenade, and shrouded their hiding place under the arch of one of the gleaming silver skyscrapers so they could study the crowd bustling along the canal without anyone noticing. "Do you think she's already gone?" Lynn whispered, voicing the question Sophie hadn't wanted to touch. "It did take us a while to stop the Wardan and find Biana and head here." "Or she's hiding," Tam countered. "She's an escaped prisoner. She can't just wander the city. And if she could build an entire underground facility, it seems like she could easily have a few spots where no one could see her unless she wants them to. Especially since we know she's good with optical illusions." "And I'm guessing you can't feel her thoughts?" Keith asked Sophie. She shook her head. "But that could just mean she still has her headdress on." "So then what's our play?" Ro asked. "Stand here until our feet go numb and hope she comes out of hiding?" "Boring. And how are you going to capture her, by the way? I'm guessing you don't want a massive tackled brawl on the street. Want me to pelt her with my daggers? That could be fun." "Or dangerous," Sophie reminded her. "You could accidentally hit the wrong person. Plus, we need to bring her in alive." "Oh, I can keep her alive," Ro promised. "Though, are you sure that's a good idea? She already escaped once." "After thousands of years," Tam argued. "Still seems like a problem future you isn't going to want to deal with," Ro noted. "But I get it. You want a chance to poke around her head without that ugly hat blocking it. Fair enough. You need to figure out how you're going to restrain her, though, because she will put up a fight. And this place is super crowded, and she totally seems like the type who'd grab a couple of hostages to force you to back off." "Okay, got any ideas?" Keith asked. "Of course. I go down there, wave my sword around to herd everyone somewhere I can defend them. Like maybe I get them all to the other side of the canal. While I'm doing that, I can lure her out by shouting about how creepy she is, and how she has a secret lair underneath the city, and how she's going to drag you into war with the humans." "You think that's her plan?" Sophie interrupted. "That seems super obvious after that long, boring speech about ruthlessness," Rose said. "Sounds like she's been studying humans to figure out how to make you guys into elfy killing machines, and she's probably teamed up with the traitors who fled Ravagog to learn some proper battle tactics. I bet she'll use the supporting to drug your enemies, so all you have to do is slaughter them while they sleep, which actually isn't that horrible of a strategy. It's brutal and kind of cheating, but she doesn't seem like she'd be too broken up about that." Dozens of new worries squeezed Sophie's heart from all sides. "If you're right, we need to get her back into custody. Now." "Does that mean we're going with my plan?" Ro asked. If you want to go down there covered in Biana's blood, waving your sword around, everyone will run from the scary ogre," Tam told her, "and not in the direction you want them to run. I also didn't actually hear any explanation for how you're going to restrain her." Ro glanced down at her breastplate, which was smeared with red. "Fine, amended plan. We send in the Moonlark, let her bat those big brown eyes, and give everyone a nice, pretty speech about how your world has a tainted history, full of enough insults that Vespera won't be able to resist showing herself, and then I jump in and shove this in her mouth." She opened a tiny compartment at the edge of her breastplate and pulled out something that looked like a slimy ball of tapioca and smelled like rusted-out septic tank. "Oh, what's that?" Keith asked, plugging his nose. "A colony of bacteria we grow to make you elves violently ill. Aren't you glad none of you have made me angry enough to use it?" Sophie's mouth went dry. "Do all ogres carry that?" "Oh, don't look so freaked. You already know I'm carrying dozens of blades. At least this won't kill you." "I guess," Tam mumbled. "Any chance I can get a dose of that from my dad?" Keith asked. "Not until I'm not stuck living with him. Even I can't stand the smell that comes out of you when you take this stuff." Guys," Lynn whispered. "Look." She pointed to the eastern side of the promenade, where a figure in a long black cloak with a hood raised was descending the steps from one of the bridges arching over the canal. "Good old Rye," Keith grumbled, white showing on his knuckles. Looks like he's headed for that curve in the embankment. Sophie nodded. It was the spot she'd focused on the most when she'd listened for Vespera's thoughts, thinking the gleaming silver lanterns lining the railing might help shape an illusion. Rye skirted towards the edge of the crowd, managing to avoid their notice as he took up a position in the center of the curve. 1 second he stood alone, his cloaked form facing towards the water, and the next second Vespera stood beside him. "I'll give her this. She's got the dramatic entrance thing mastered," Rose said underneath her breath, but her clothes need work. Vespera had added a hooded cloak to her outfit, and the thick golden fabric cascaded over her layered ruffles, hiding any hint of her figure, and disguising any injuries she might have sustained in her scuffle with Bianna. "Okay, you guys have 5 seconds to tell me your plan," Roe warned her. "I'm charging in for an epic slash fest." Before any of them could respond, a flash of white light triggered a wave of gasps and screams through the promenade. "I don't understand," Sophie whispered, blinking hard to make sure she was really seeing what she thought she was seeing. Rye had trapped Vespera under a dome of white pulsing energy. "This isn't going to be good," Keith said, pointing to a second black-cloaked figure, carving a bold path through the scrambling masses. The newest member of the Neverseen kept their face covered as they headed straight for Rye, and Sophie assumed it had to be Gethin, until the figure raised their arms and shouted, "You're welcome!" The voice was Lady Gisella's. Chapter 83. "You can come out now, Keith," Lady Gisella called as Rye encased her and himself inside a wider force field, then formed another glowing white dome around the entire promenade. "You too, Sophie. I know you're both here. You'd never give up while Vespera was still in the city. It's time for us all to stop hiding." "Don't you dare," Ro told Keith, grabbing his sleeve as he took a step forward. "She's already blocking my weapons with that energy thing. I'm not letting you give away our location." "Ro's right," Sophie whispered as Lady Gisella silenced the terrified crowd. "We need to figure out what game she's playing before we do anything." "Are you sure she's playing one?" Lynn asked, keeping her voice low. "She just captured Vespera." "With my mom, there's always a game," Keith mumbled. "Besides, she's like Vespera's #1 fangirl." "Then this seems a little bit of a strange way to meet her hero," Tam noted. "And why is Rye helping her?" "She told us Rye and Finton don't get along," Sophie whispered. "Maybe she used that to recruit him to her side." Keith gritted his teeth. "I should have expected that." "It's not your fault," Sophie told him. "I didn't catch it either." Her mind raced through every conversation she'd had with Lady Gisella, trying to spot any other clues they might have missed, since she was sure they were about to come back to haunt them. "Clearly you're still refusing to trust me," Lady Gisella called from the promenade. "Do you really not see how much I'm trying to help?" "What I see," Keith snapped, earning a groan from Ro, as all heads whipped towards where they were hiding, "is you dressed up like the Neverseen." "It's called taking back what's mine," Lady Gisella told him. "You have no idea how many strings I've had to pull, how many plans I've had to weave together to clean up Finton's mess and get us to this moment. But here we finally are." "We're not a we," Sophie shouted to remind her. "That's what you keep saying, but I've been waiting for you to realize your mistake. But this one," she pointed to Vespera, who stood with folded hands studying her, "has accelerated the timeline. So it seems I need to give you both a nudge." "Is that supposed to scare us?" Keith asked, yanking free from Ro's grasp and stepping out of Tam's shadows. He crossed his arms and gave his mom his coldest smirk. "Because it doesn't. And what's with the hood? If you're done hiding, why don't you let everybody see how shredded your face is?" "Oh boy, this is not going to end well," Ro muttered, as she drew her sword and stalked toward Keith. "Hello, Princess." Lady Gisella practically purred. "So glad you could make it, though it doesn't look like this crowd feels the same." Ro's appearance had caused even more screaming and scrambling than Rye and Lady Gisella's arrival had. "It's not my fault elves are skittish," Ro told her, "and obviously you are too. Otherwise, you wouldn't be hiding behind your little force field." "As a precaution," Lady Gisella promised. "I assure you, I'm very happy to see you." "I'm going out there," Sophie whispered to Tam and Lynn, "but I think you guys should stay hidden until we figure out what she's planning. Don't break down her force field yet, Tam. Save that for when we can make it count." They both nodded. "Ah, here's our fearless moonlark," Lady Gisella said as Sophie marched towards Keith and Ro. "I assume the Vacker boy is nearby, along with the rest of your ever-loyal friends, and your inseparable bodyguards, of course." perhaps we could speed these reveals along. One at a time is going to be tedious. No one else is here, Sophie told her. We split up. Aren't you the one who's always going on about delegating? She could hear the smile in Lady Gisella's voice when she said, I suppose. Though, judging by the amount of blood I'm seeing on the princess, I'm guessing some of that delegating wasn't necessarily by choice. It was not, Vespera agreed, smoothing a ruffle on her cape. I made sure their vanisher will never be the same. Sophie's hands shook, and when she noticed Keith's doing the same, she hooked her arm through his. She was grateful for that bit of support when Vespera added, I could have finished her, but she showed such promise that I decided to give her a chance at becoming useful someday. See, now that's why I'm looking forward to working with you, Lady Gisela said. Finally, an empath I can count on to make the right decisions. Is that what this whole thing was about? Sophie asked, choking back a swell of nausea. You needed us to get to her. I wouldn't say needed, but you definitely made it convenient. I knew Finton would sequester her away, and I'd have to flush her out, and he'd already gone to so much trouble to make this personal to you, I figured why not take advantage. To what end? Vespera asked, as Keith's arms shook harder. Do you truly expect me to form an alliance with my captor? I expect us to have an important discussion without either of us trying to kill the other, Lady Gisela told her, and hope you see my wisdom. See, I think that's a missed opportunity, Rose said. A death match would be way more entertaining. Who's with me? She turned to the crowd, but everyone shrank back another step. If conversation was your aim, I cannot fathom why you chose to hold it with an audience watching, Vespera wondered. Because it's high time for our world to be properly educated, Lady Gisela said. Now that I'm taking back control, I want people to see the real Neverseen, not the imprudent, vengeful fools Finton painted us to be. No one looked impressed, but some were whispering in third quarters, calling for help. Am I to assume that Finton's no longer part of the Order? Vespera asked. He may not even be among the living, Lady Gisela said, but that's up to Sophie's father. I knew Grady wouldn't be able to resist targeting Finton today. After all, Finton trained his daughter's murderer. Sophie sucked in a breath. She should have realized that would have been part of Grady's motive, maybe even why he looked so exhausted after controlling Finton. But who will emerge from the facility alive is up to them, Lady Gisela added. My money's on Grady, Ro jumped in. So is mine, Lady Gisela agreed. He's the most ruthless elf I've ever met. I noticed that as well, Vespera said. It is a pity he stands on the wrong side. Lady Gisela nodded. Believe me, I'm working on that. Keith snorted. You seriously think Grady's going to join the Neverseen? People aren't hard to predict when you understand what drives them, she told him. It's how I knew we'll all end up on this promenade today. And how I know there's no way you and Sophie limited your group to the two of you and the princess. So how about whoever's hiding in the shadows stops pretending we don't realize they're there? Or if you'd rather, I can have Rye cut you off from the rest of your friends. I'll give you 3 seconds to make your decision. Lady Gisela admitted to 2 before Tam emerged from the archway. Lynn didn't follow. Only one of the twins, Lady Gisela noted. You expect me to believe that? Believe what you want, Tam told her. His voice was as steady as the arm he stretched behind him, drawing the shadows away from where he'd been hiding and revealing an empty alley. Lynn can't be underwater for very long, so she left with the others. I didn't realize the girl of many floods had learned such restraint. Interesting. Lady Gisela dragged out the word. Once again, your group proves to be full of surprises. Thankfully, this one works in my favor. I know what you're doing, Rice snarled at Tam, as swirls of shadow crawled through all the force fields. Do you really think I can't block you? Light flared, beating back the black swirls. Impressive, Lady Gisela said, tilting her head to study Tam. But before we get to that, she turned to the crowd. I see you sneering at me. I even understand why. The change our world needs comes with a cost. One many of you are afraid to pay, but we must if we want to save what matters most. That's the truth that the Black Swan refuses to accept. And it's why they'll fail. Both of our orders are fighting the same problems, but mine is the only one willing to make the necessary sacrifices. You mean murdering people, and burning down cities, and threatening entire species, and collapsing a castle full of people, and torturing humans for research? Sophie asked. The last accusation earned a wave of gasps. Lady Gisela shrugged. I already told you, I'm here to clean up Fenton's mess. But sometimes we do have to tear down what isn't working in order to have enough space to rebuild something stronger. That's what she taught me, she pointed to Vespera. Her teachings have guided every plan I've built. And now, we'll finally have a chance to combine our visions. They cannot be combined, Vespera informed her. Our philosophies are opposite. They aren't as different as you think. Once you read my archetype, Keith laughed. So, is this the part where I tell you I didn't bother getting your stupid book back? Or the part where I promise you'll never get the key either? Lady Gisela drew out her sigh. You get your photographic memory from me, Keith. I only asked for the archetype as a test, which is the same reason I asked you to destroy the facility, and clearly you're still not ready. He never will be, Vespera warned. None of them will, and the fact that you haven't accepted that does not bode well for our alliance. Does that mean you're rejecting my offer? Lady Gisela asked. I'd think carefully before you answer. I will leave you trapped until the council locks you away for the rest of eternity, but I'd much rather we tear down the world and rebuild it together. Yeah, like that's ever going to happen, Keith snapped, as Ro tightened her grip on her sword. Vespera tilted her head towards Lady Gisela. Even if I were to agree, you realize the second you lower this force field, the ogre is going to attack. Of course, Lady Gisela said. That's why I brought this. She pulled something from her cloak, and the same moment a searing flash whited out the world, and even Vespera screamed as the promenade erupted into chaos. Everyone tripped over each other as they fought to back away. Sophie clung to Keith as she rubbed her eyes, and when the world snapped into focus, the force field that had been around Lady Gisela and Rye was gone, and Keith's mom was clutching to some sort of silver-nozzled weapon now pointed at her son. Ro was slumped at his feet, her chest splattered with a slimy purple goo that looked like a splotcher. Black veins were already spreading from the center, spiraling across Ro's sweat-slicked skin as her limbs started convulsing. What did you do to her? Sophie shouted. You really can't guess. Lady Gisela shook her head. This is my present to Dimitar for what he put me through in his prison. His princess just got a lethal dose of Ziporidine. That concludes chapters 82 and 83. I'll see you tomorrow for 84 and 85. Thanks for listening. Bye.